What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am back with my Week 2 Team Builder for Season 3 of the GBA D-League. This week we are against Danekii and the Roseradenborg. Really excited for this matchup. He's one of my better friends in the league, I would say, and I've known him for quite a while, so definitely exciting to get this opportunity to play him. This will actually be our third matchup ever in draft format. I won one of them, he has won one of them, so this basically becomes the rubber match, which is pretty cool for sure. Now, make sure to check him out. He will be linked in the description below. Very high quality content creator, and especially if you're a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh, I think you will enjoy his content for sure. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at this matchup, as my opponent Dan has Magearna, Garchomp, Tangrowth, Suicune, Darmanitan, Aerodactyl, Frostlass, Espeon, Licky, Mega Absol, and Stunfisk, where his Z-Captains are the Magearna, of course, and probably the more scary one of the two, the Stunfisk. Okay, so this matchup's kind of tough because he does have the Magearna, and as a lot of you know, I'm sure, Magearna is arguably the most threatening Pokemon that is allowed in this entire season of the GBA D-League. It is able to single-handedly sweep teams if you just give it one free turn. That's all it needs, is a free turn of setup, and then it can threaten to sweep an entire team, especially when it has the Z-Crystal on deck. So yeah, Magearna is an absolutely enormous threat. Whenever I'm building my team, I'm going to really design my team so that Magearna doesn't get any free turns no matter what. That's the general game plan. I might not be able to OHKO Magearna with every single member of my team, but what I'm going to be able to do, I think, with my team building is I'm going to be able to, at the very least, get off a huge hit against Magearna on a turn where I'm expecting some sort of setup move from it, and by getting that chip damage on Magearna, it guarantees that whatever my dedicated check to Magearna is in the back is going to be able to pick it off with ease. So that's the general game plan here in terms of dealing with the Magearna. I cannot let it have any free turns. No one in the league should allow Magearna to have a free turn. If you saw Dan's Week 1 game, and I'm sorry if this is a spoiler, make sure to go back and check that out if you haven't yet, he swept his opponent with Calm Mind, Baton Pass into Magearna. The free turn occurred whenever his opponent was allowing him to just set up these Calm Minds with his Mega Absol and then just Baton Pass directly into Magearna on a Melodic. That's not something that I can afford to let happen, and my entire team is still designed to be able to prevent that type of strategy from happening, both from the Espeon, which gets Baton Pass, and the Mega Absol, which gets Baton Pass in conjunction with Calm Mind. So that's definitely a strategy I have in mind when I'm building this team. But looking at some of the other bigger threats on his team, the Garchomp is kind of annoying for me just because its speed tier does outpace my base 100, so I have less things that can outspeed the Garchomp, and it is able to break down a good chunk of my team if it's able to get up a Swords Dance. But once again, my team is designed to really pressure Garchomp if it ever gets up a Swords Dance, or just pressure it from ever getting that opportunity. So, or my draft really can be built into a team that does that. So Garchomp, while it is probably a top 3 threat on his team, I think is manageable just based upon the amount of pressure I can exert. And also, I think the Mega Absol might honestly be the biggest threat on his team to mine, even in accounting for the Magearna, as of course Magearna is naturally an enormous threat, but the Mega Absol outspeeds almost everything on my draft. I think the only thing on my entire draft that outspeeds it neutrally is the Torn T. So I would need Scarfers, I would need a speed boost from my Scolipede to be able to outspeed it. So that's a huge threat for sure. So I really have to make sure that that is not going to be able to get 3 Swords Dances in my face. I have to be able to damage it and whittle it over time. And just some of the, I guess, flaws that I want to talk about here with this draft, some of the things that I'm really going to try to hammer on, try to really take advantage of. If you look across his draft, his hazard removal is restricted to Aerodactyl and Magic Bouncers. Okay, so that's something that I really feel like I could take advantage of that, because regular Aerodactyl, we faced Mega Aerodactyl last week, but regular Aerodactyl is pretty frail. Even if you invest defensively, it is pretty frail. It's not a safe defogger by any means, and that means that if I'm going to bring something like Rocks and Spikes, which is something I kind of want to do against a team like this whose Magic Bouncers are both weak to Scolipede, my Spike setter, and whose removal is something as frail as an Aerodactyl, it won't be too hard to abuse that Aerodactyl by packing proper coverage. So I think I really can hazard stack on him. It just becomes a question of how many hazards I want to try to get on the field. Both Spikes and Toxic Spikes are nice against his entire team. However, if I'm going to be able to hit the Aerodactyl with my Spike user, being the Scolipede, I have to bring Aqua Tail. And looking at the rest of his draft, I really need to also have Megahorn to allow me to hit the Tangrowth as hard as possible, and I feel like I also need Earthquake so that Magearna is not going to be able to set up on me for free. So that means that I'm not actually able to bring both Spikes and Toxic Spikes, which kind of sucks, as having all three types of the, all three of the main types of hazards would have been very nice against him, but it's just not something I could afford to do here in this matchup. But the hazards weakness is definitely what I'm going to be pressing on, especially the Toxic Spikes weakness, as he doesn't have a grounded poison, he doesn't have good removal. That can seriously wear him down quickly. Everything on his team is harmed by the Toxic Spikes outside of the Magearna. So if my entire team is directed toward preventing Magearna from getting out of hand, and I have Toxic Spikes working for me in the background, I think I'll be in good shape here in this matchup. So that's the general idea that I'm trying to build around here. I also think, just one other little nitpick about his draft that I'm going to try to abuse, I think his offense really is restricted to Magearna, Garchomp, and Mega Absol. I know he has the Darmanitan as well, and that is pretty good offensively, but in terms of like super threatening offense, I probably shouldn't say this before like Darm just pushes my face in or something, but in terms of the most threatening offense, I think it's really limited to Garchomp, Mega Absol, and the Magearna. And if I'm able to keep those three Pokemon specifically in check, I don't think he'll be able to break through a team as fat as mine, that naturally fat as mine is. So that's just something else to kind of think about as well. But some of the bigger threats against him that I have on my roster, Torrentee just straight up body bags him outside of the Stunfisk, so that's something. Just something like Taunt 3 attacks Torrentee, which is exactly what I'm going to bring, can put in a lot of work against his entire draft. I think that Mew also could be designed to do a lot of damage against his team. Something as simple as a Nasty Plot set could be good as long as I have coverage for the Magearna. The Scolipede as well offensively does a number to his team. I think that Nidoqueen could do a lot as well. Unfortunately, it is outsped by all of the more threatening things on his team, which is something I have to take into account when building my team. But offensively, Nidoqueen certainly is very good. I also think that the Rotom Heat is phenomenal in this matchup. Normally, Rotom Heat is just mediocre at best, but Rotom Heat matches up so well against him. Being able to have electric coverage for Suicune, fire coverage for Tangrowth, potentially ice coverage for Garchomp, for the fire coverage for Magearna, just electric coverage in general is good against Darm and Aerodactyl, and the Frostlass, the fire coverage, like, it's everything. It's so good here. Excuse me. So Rotom Heat is certainly something worth considering at the very least in this matchup. Now, that's enough for the team overview. Let's take a look at the team that I'm deciding to bring here for this matchup. So starting things off with the Toxic Spike user, I pretty much already alluded to this full set. The only real debate here about this set was if I wanted to go more of a Light Orb variant to be able to have a chance to OHKO the Aerodactyl, or if I wanted to go Ground EMZ to be able to nuke the Magearna a little bit harder. What I do expect to see is a max HP Magearna with Trick Room. I think that is the most likely set against my team, just because I naturally have a lot of speed. Just the natural speed tiers of my team are in general much higher than Magearna, so I could certainly see him going Trick Room also as a means of counteracting the speed boost Scolipede option. So with that in mind, expecting max HP, I definitely could have gone something like Ground EMZ or Earthquake on the Scolipede to be able to nuke that a bit harder, but the fact of the matter is that actually doesn't OHKO Magearna, and the only way that would be able to OHKO is after a Spike, and because I opted to not bring Spikes in this matchup, I am actually just going to go with a Life Orb, because regardless, it is a 2-hit KO with my ground coverage on Scolipede against the Magearna. So Life Orb made the most sense, as well as being able to OHKO, or at least having a chance to OHKO uninvested Aerodactyl. I think you'll have at least a little bit of investment. If he's max HP, I won't be able to OHKO him, but the fact of the matter is, once I get up a T-Spike, if he goes straight to his Aerodactyl, which is what I kind of expect, I'm just going to click Aqua Tail. Okay, this is not my win con in this game. It wants to get up Toxic Spikes and to keep them up. That's this thing's job. It's not to win, it's to get up the T-Spikes so that the other members of my team can win. I'm willing to sacrifice off my Scolipede to Aqua Tail and Aerodactyl that is about to click Defog, just so I can make sure I keep them up. Maybe I'll kill the Aerodactyl. Worst case scenario, if I do not kill the Aerodactyl and he defogs, I can spam Toxic Spikes until I go down, because he has to attack me eventually. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, another way to approach that could be to just kill off the Aerodactyl and then set up a Toxic Spike on the next turn, because I will pretty much undoubtedly outspeed absolutely anything he can go into. The only exception might be the Absol, but of course I had Mega Horn for that, so this is super good against him overall. I already talked about the reasoning behind the coverage, so I won't go into more detail on that, but it does outspeed everything that is not Mega Absol. So next up is the Torn T. This does outspeed the Mega Absol, which is nice. This is again a Life Orb variant with Hurricane, Heat Wave, and HP Ice. HP Ice allows me to offensively check the Garchomp, which is pretty nice. I do expect to see a Yache Berry, but I do have a lot of ways to pop that Yache Berry with my team. I have ice coverage on this, ice coverage on ice coverage on 2 other mons, I believe, here coming up as well, so I should be able to pop that relatively easily, I would assume. And at the very least, I could just weaken him into range of a Hurricane if absolutely necessary. So, yeah, this just body bags him. Honestly, he doesn't have much at all for this. Unfortunately, I can't taunt Licky because of its ability in Oblivious, but even so, if I have that Toxic Spike up, Hurricane spam does hurt the Licky a lot. In fact, it is actually able to 2-hit KO Licky potentially, depending on his investment. So, this can beat his best special wall. The most annoying thing probably for him to switch into this would be the Stunfisk, but I do have ways to abuse that. Most notably, I have the Scolipede, which can get up a free hazard on it. I have my Seismitoad, which can also get up a free hazard on it. Even the Kank could come in because I am, which I'll show you here soon, I am Facade on Mega Kangaskhan as well, so I can switch into that Stunfisk with relative ease, I feel. So, yeah, this is a solid Pokemon against him overall. Not a whole lot else to say about the EV spread, as I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory for the most part. So, next up is the Rotom Heat. Now, this is my dedicated counter to the Magearna. I don't really plan to hard switch this into Magearna. My game plan is more so to weaken Magearna on the turn of setup, and then to switch this thing in after whatever that Pokemon has gone down, or just after whatever I decide to sack to Magearna goes down, as there is no way he is going to be able to knock me out with a +1 Z move. After rocks. That's what this investment allows me to do. It allows me to survive with the Assault Vest, a Z Focus Blast at +1 after rocks. And that's, I think, the most important calc I could possibly hit with the Rotom, as it simply does not get, a Magearna it simply does not get coverage for the Rotom Heat. If it got something like Surf, that would be a different story. If it got something like Power Gem, that would be a different story, but it does not get those. So we are going to be able to, I believe, effectively counter the Magearna. I guess check is the better word for this whenever this scenario comes up. So definitely nice there. The investment will allow me to knock out the Magearna in 1 hit after 2 rounds of Stealth Rock, guaranteed. Is that necessarily going to come into play? Not necessarily, but I did not want to invest any more in my offenses because the defensive calc was so crucial with being able to survive that Z Focus Blast at +1. Excuse me. So, yeah, pretty straightforward. It is Assault Vest, so I do need to bring 4 coverage moves, and these were the most obvious coverage moves to bring. No sense in being unpredictable on those, because those are by far the best 4 I could possibly bring, I think. So, next up is the Mew. This is, again, an absolute monster against his team. This is a bulky, nasty plot variant with enough speed for timid Suicune, just in case he wants to be kind of cheeky and bring more of a fast Suicune. It's in my best interest to outspeed that, because this is going to be one of my means of 1v1ing this Suicune. Granted, I have a lot of ways of putting pressure on Suicune if he decides to bring it, but even so, I definitely want to make sure I outspeed it if push comes to shove and I need to be able to 1v1 it with this set. Now, the defense investment and HP investment here allows me to survive a +2 Adamant knockoff from the Mega Absol. Not after Stealth Rock, but even so, with my Colbur Berry, I am able to survive that, which could definitely come in clutch. The combination of Psyshock and Flamethrower also does a number to his entire team. At +2, I can 2-hit KO everything on his roster. So, yeah, Mew is a monster, once again, to be reckoned with. Not bring a Defog again this week, but don't worry, I will end up whipping that out at some point here. But this is just going to show you that I really don't think I need to bring Defog on Mew every single week for my team to be effective. I'm going to be pressuring him so much with my own hazards that I don't need to bring Defog on the Mew. So, that's the Mew set here. Next up is the Seismitoad. This is my dedicated check to Darmanitan, just to make sure I can whittle that thing down over time through the combination of Rocky Helmet on this, Stealth Rock overall, as well as Toxic Spikes. I think Darm will get worn down in due time. I also have Skull to potentially burn a Mega Absol on the switch-in if needed. Of course, if I have the T-Spikes up, I can just click Earthquake, and it's a little bit better because it does a lot of damage to the Mega Absol. But even so, just some food for thought there. Earthquake for the Magearna, 2-hit KOs, max HP Magearna, which is all I really need. And then I have the knockoff or the incoming Tangrowth, just in case he is Rocky Helmet, as that will allow my Mega Kangaskhan to do more damage here later on. I also have enough speed on this to be able to outpace a 0-speed Magearna, I believe. just in case. I want to make sure I outspeed that, obviously. So next up is the Mega Kangaskhan, as I've already mentioned a couple times. This is a very fat set. The defense investment and the HP allows me to survive a +2 Jolly Earthquake from a non-life orb Garchomp. Basically, it forces him to lock and do Outrage, which could be nice because of the confusion chances later on, as well as he's locked into a move basically, so I know exactly how to deal with it. Despite the fact that I don't have resistances to it, it means that I can guarantee check it with any of my mons that do outspeed it. So that's the general thought with that. Wish for Recovery, which is pretty nice. Facade, because I really expect to get Toxic at some point or burned by the Suicune, and the attack investment allows me to always break a Suicune substitute regardless of if I'm burned. And if I am burned, I can guarantee to hit KO the Suicune. So definitely a solid set there. So kind of went through the team builder itself a little bit faster, but I felt like I covered everything pretty well. Make sure to let me know in the comments if you have any questions on any of this team, but I am pretty confident in this team going in. We'll see how it goes, though. Dan is a solid player, and of course Magearna is a spooky mon. Mega Absol spooky against my team as well. It's a really big threat against me. I just need to make sure it doesn't get free turns of setup. I need those T-spikes up early to make sure that it's never able to get out of hand. So that's about all I have to say on this team. I hope you did enjoy, and I hope you're looking forward to the Week 2 battle against Danekii coming up tomorrow. Have a good one. Peace.